What do you wish you could tell your younger self in the moment that you were sobbing at Moo's birth?
I look at it as a roller coaster, the peaks and valleys. And even when you're in those valleys, of trusting and understanding and appreciating that I have been given one of the greatest gifts you will ever know in your lifetime.
Hi again, Michael Ray. Second podcast in like a few months.
What do I owe a second podcast other than being grateful and blessed, I guess, right?
I don't think I'm supposed to do this in the podcast world. I'm like, I think I'm breaking podcast
terms and conditions or rules and regulations tell you it's one and done. It's not a two thing.
And I've not told the company that I work with now of like, I'm doing this because I have to. So you and I interviewed a few months ago, and the goal of that interview was talking about connection in a disconnected world as we smile. And in that interview, you made me cry. And I'm like, I need to talk to you about this topic. So before we launch into what that is, tell me about you in terms of being a father and your children, because that's integral to the talk today of birthing a child that's going to have challenges in life.
It's funny because even this morning, I was with a complete stranger I'd met for the first time, and I do have a handful of questions sometimes because it always piques my curiosity, and this is getting to the point of answering your question. But I asked him, I've asked a lot of people this because I love the answers. What do you consider life's greatest blessing? I asked him that, and it doesn't happen often, but he immediately flipped the script and turned it back on me, and he's, well, I want to hear from you. What do you consider life's greatest blessing? And for me, my answer always is love. Now, in answering your question, I don't think there really truly in life is a greater gift than being a parent. And it kind of goes hand in hand with that love. So for me, life's greatest blessing is love, but it's also the love as a parent, as a father, and my children. It can't be replaced. I don't know why no one ever in this lifetime, if you have the choice, would not want to choose to be a parent.
How many kids do you have?
I have 4.
4. So let's talk about Maddie.
No, I say 4, but it was 5.
Oh, you said that, and I'm so sorry.
So yeah. So it was 5. I was blessed with 5 children, and the good Lord took one home.
Did you lose that child before Maddie?
After Maddie.
After Maddie.
Yeah.
I can't imagine that loss, Michael. Maddie has Down syndrome. And the reason you made me cry this last interview, why I wanted to talk to you again today, is to bring hope to parents that when you have a child born with adversity, whatever that is, whether it's physical, psychological, emotional, cognitive, that feeling as a parent when that baby's born. So I want you to tell me about Maddie's birth again. Just recap for me, please. You had this little baby girl born.
It's fascinating getting asked this question because where this is hyper relevant right now in answering, that is, I was in Nashville about 10 days ago, and I reconnected with one of my old bosses.
Oh, the one you called?
Now, when I say reconnected, we've stayed in touch, but I physically had not seen him in 15 years. So there's the occasional text a couple times a year, whatever, hope you're doing well, that kind of stuff. But again, we physically hadn't seen each other, been in the same room for 15 years. So knowing he lived in Nashville, I reached out and said, hey, I'm going to be in town, would love to grab dinner. And I did. And I actually brought this up to him. Going back to your question now and where he was relevant was when Maddie was born in 1999. The very first phone call I made was to my boss. We had a very unique connection. I had worked for him at that point for probably easily 2.5 years. And he's maybe about 7-8 years older than me. So the first phone call I made, and again, there's these days in your life, so for me, April 23rd, 1999, as I had just found out, I had left the OR. My now ex-wife had a C-section, so I went back to the room waiting for them to come back, and I made a phone call. And as I stood staring out that room, I can still in my mind see that room as if I just walked out 10 minutes ago.
Mm.
But the first phone call I made was to my boss, at the time, Larry Cox, just sobbing uncontrollably and trying to manage the emotions and feelings around of how my life, because we didn't know, until she came out, how my life was going to dramatically change. And so I brought that up to him. I said, now we kind of laugh about it. I said, I don't know if you remember, but, when Moo was born, the first phone call, he goes, I know that. So, at times you don't know why people, why God puts certain people in your life and, on this journey. But I look back and what it represented to me and, at least in the moment, how it kind of, that corporate term I can't stand, level set, a little bit. But, it's funny that I hadn't seen him in 15 years and here we're talking about it. And the first phone call I ever made was not even a family member.
What gutted me when in our conversation that struck me so much is that you sobbed uncontrollably. You learned that your daughter's got Down syndrome. Your life is going to change as you know it. You called your boss and then said you called your mom too, right?
The second phone call I made was my mom.
What did your mom say?
It'll be okay. God doesn't give
Mm.
us anything that we can't handle.
Mm.
He's in control. So if you put yourself in that place to where you fully do have faith and trust, it will be okay. But that's not easy at times, when we're human beings and have minds. It's not that Larry, my first phone call being a boss, the interesting thing at that time, he was an atheist.
Mm.
So
Interesting.
there's not a position of understanding and trusting God and having faith.
Yeah.
It'll be, well, everything's just going to be okay,
Right.
kind of
Yeah.
thing versus, your mom who adds that element and perspective of, well, through faith, yeah, everything will be okay because he
Mhm.
understands what he's doing. But it took a long time to
Yeah.
to get beyond that.
So, can you take me a little bit further into beyond the tears and tell me? And I am asking this question because there are many parents in the same position in hospitals or home births that are hit like gut punched of the unexpected because you don't know. I want you to take me back to your emotions beyond
Yeah.
the sobbing and your initial responses. And what was that guttural feel and all of the reasons behind the sobbing?
I think when you talk about how life is going to change, there's a massive amount of uncertainty. It's interesting because in navigating the process of days and weeks after that, kind of how it goes, at least here locally. I'm assuming it's pretty similar in a lot of places, but there's a network, of people for support. Maddie took about 10 days before she came home. She had some lung issues and things, working through. So it was a lot easier for my ex-wife to kind of manage. And I think in talking to people as far as that network of support, that women have a tendency to allow the maternal instinct to kick in these situations where men have a great deal of loss. It's as almost as if something just literally that you cared about just died.
Right.
And I guess my expectations were even greater because my first child was a girl. We did not find out the sex of Maddie. So there's also that little bit of, a father, especially after
Yeah.
having one and wanting a son
Yeah. A
and
boy.
getting a daughter,
Yeah.
not diminishing it, but there's that element. So it's the element of loss and how do you manage through that? And even when Maddie came home about 10 days later, I wasn't ready.
Mhm.
So there's all of that uncertainty of not knowing how we were going to manage it, and even having multiple conversations with multiple families. Again, a part of that support network here locally through Down Syndrome of Louisville, to where you start having conversations with parents that have navigated it. I wasn't there. I mean, I physically, mentally, and emotionally just was not there in dealing with, because again, even though you have Down syndrome, they're all over the board, as far as their intellectual capabilities. So all of those things just circulate through through your mind that, and I think that's where the perspective of loss comes into play, is because everything just immediately changed and we don't know how good or bad that situation's going to be.
Well, the other thing you said to me was, how are they going to treat my child? Which is on every parent's mind when you have that adversity in birth. And when are you going to have to step in and beat a boy up that's not being nice to your daughter? Tell me about her now. How's she doing? What has she done, I guess, with her life, and all of your fears with where she is now? What culminated?
So it's interesting. I want to address the first piece that you said, because this still happens to this day, but I laugh about it now. And that is, my oldest daughter was playing sand volleyball last night, and I took Maddie with me to go watch her play.
Yeah.
And where really some of that comes into play right now is young people. And when I say young, there were two kids last night that probably were around 5, 6 years old that walked
Okay.
past, and it's the stairs, because in some cases they've never seen or don't know how to process at a very young age why someone looks, physically different. So it literally just happened last night, but I get it. I understand that part, but navigating to today, and the question you asked, I don't live with any regret, in my life. But I would tell you that if I could go back, I appreciate my daughter and the lessons she has taught me so much more now today, that I didn't at one point in time.
Mm.
And really learn to understand and appreciate the differences in which she's providing a level of joy and happiness that most normal human beings don't.
Can you give me two more things that she's taught you?
Well, because without a doubt, understanding and appreciating nonverbal communication, because undoubtedly, when I start something like Smile Project Louisville, there were two things. If Maddie didn't exist, Smile Project Louisville is not going to exist, because again, I understood the simplicity of smiling as an affirmation of love. So understanding that piece, and you know what, I think with that, and it's almost in the same vein, and that is understanding how to smile through adversity
Yeah.
and through challenges in life, which still exists today. Maddie just turned 26 in late April, and look, those challenges are still real today, where she doesn't eat hard foods. It's all soft, so we puree everything.
Mm.
Now that's our normal. But
Right.
again, it took years to understand that, so those challenges today are no different, but yet again, it's the ability of still finding joy and happiness and smiling when life doesn't go your way
Yeah.
and life gets harder. Maddie taught me both of those things, but also that secondary element with and again, I more often than I don't even call her Maddie, because we started calling her Moo when she was a couple of months old, so Moo and losing my son were the two things of understanding how to smile through this shit show of life, because we never know when it's going to get really hard.
You're taking me to the next question is, I want to know how Maddie Moo supported you in the loss of your son.
That's interesting, because again, being nonverbal, she doesn't show, when I say she doesn't show emotion, she doesn't show the raw emotion of tears,
Yeah.
unless there's physical pain, is really the only times that she cries. Trying to understand her mindset in her intellectual ability to comprehend things. Like when we were going to the volleyball game last night, getting out of the car, close the door, Maddie. Well, she knows how to do that. Go empty the dishwasher, Maddie. She knows how to do that. But you know what? Maybe a 7 or 8 year old knows how to do that.
Mhm.
Do that too. So it's interesting, because I don't know, but I will tell you that where I think she does know, even though she can't communicate it, is one of the most visible moments in my entire life is, of course, we go, randomly and periodically out to my son's grave. The two things that really have something unique on there is being that my youngest son was an identical twin. When Charlie passed away, we have Sam's handprint. We traced his hand at the time, and it says on there, my twin brother Sam. And then we also have an angel with a butterfly, because butterflies kind of represent fallen children. So my point in the story is there's been numerous times I've gone out there and Maddie has kneeled down and has kissed the angel.
Oh, oh my God.
Unprompted, so
Just hurt you.
that tells me, so when you ask that question, I know when we're there that she knows. And I am 100% convinced, I mean, and they talk about people who see spirits and all that kind of stuff, but I jokingly at times go, I know you can see angels. And she giggles. That's her only way. So again, when we talk about that nonverbal communication, I think that's her way of not telling me, but telling me, yeah, that I do. That she has these unique superpowers that us normal people, if we want to say that, don't have. So I do think that she sees angels, and to me that affirmation is, when we're visiting him physically, at that grave, her kneeling down and kissing that angel tells me she knows.
Can you tell me a story of that affect on other people where that smile and that joy and simplicity and love was extended to somebody beyond your family?
They're numerous.
I'm sure. I'm sure.
They're almost endless.
Yeah.
It's a question of, do I need to tell you about a 28-year-old third grade school teacher that was battling stage 3 colon cancer? Or one of the hardest ones I ever did was Angie. And the interesting thing about this is everything exists on my phone. And at times when I'm looking for certain things, I go back and going, God, I can't believe that was 5 years ago. But when I watch it, I live it as if it had just happened. But, through trying to make the world smile, and I think I shared this the last time we were on, but if I didn't, so many people had reached out to me and telling me the stories of others.
Mhm.
So I'm going to give you 2 really quick stories. The first one is Angie, who's local, and I got asked to go try to make a mom smile who 3 months before lost her 14-year-old daughter.
Oh.
She had a seizure and died suddenly, and I'm like, and then I found out she's buried in the same cemetery as my son. So of course,
Mm.
so it's the ability to go and make someone feel loved. In the moment, they're not easy. Or again, I knew her story because someone had reached out to me. Or there's so many stories of people in which one was, I like bourbon, and I was in Texas doing my smile tour, and I walked into a liquor store at like 6 o'clock looking for a bottle of bourbon, and I had an instant connection with Kay, who was working the cash register. And as I kind of started doing my thing, near the tail end, she broke down crying because she was like, I got into a car accident this morning. I've had an awful day.
Mm.
And yet there's some random guy from Louisville, Kentucky that in the moment is doing something nice for me and putting his arm around me and hugging me, and I don't even know who you are. And that's why I often, a lot of times in doing it, whether I knew who the person was and got the story or I didn't, it's just, we never know what someone's carrying and what they're going through. And sometimes people carry those burdens and they're in those dark places without sharing that. So how we treat others impacts people. So, I say that, sometimes, don't get into road rage when you're driving because maybe that person just lost their job or they found out their mom has cancer. We just don't know what people are going through.
Hmm. Hmm.
Unless, so that, I guess that's 2 examples of people that, and the stories are numerous. They're numerous because now there's been hundreds.
I want to segue that. You know how I do 3 wrap up questions, but I want to keep going on that train of thought. wrap up questions pertaining to messaging and hope to parents who have a child born and these fears over what's going to happen in life. So here's number one is, with what you've just said, what message do you have for parents who are also sobbing that the day their baby is born?
Hope, trusting God's plan that He will never give us something that we can't handle, in Philippians 4:13. And I don't mean to diminish this, some Bible thumper where I know a lot of the Bible, but I do know Philippians 4:13, all things through Christ, are possible. So again, I look back at that time and would tell anybody to trust the journey, and that love is a very, very powerful thing. And in that God is using you for a purpose.
Mm-hmm.
And I never understood maybe my purpose. And again, think about this. Maddie was born in 99. And I really, truly don't think my purpose was manifested and known for 19 years.
Mm-hmm.
And again, like I said, I don't live with any regret. But if I could go back and do it differently, man, how my life would have been more joyful and happy
Mm-hmm.
through through the shit show.
Yeah, and just trusting in that promise.
And trusting in that. And it doesn't mean, again, when I say, we smile and make others smile because life is hard, not easy. It may not be easy, but that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
And the thief of joy is comparing. And I did that so often, in which I compared my life to others and going, why do they have it so much easier than me?
Right.
It's
Right.
okay. It's okay.
Mm-hmm. I also feel so strongly part of the hope is what adversity does to somebody, the joy that comes out of adversity, right? Like you and I spoke last time, the reason I was in tears is I was born with deformed hands, and holy smokes, there are challenges. However, it's also, I think, anybody's superpower because you've had to be tough. You've had to learn all these things that somebody wouldn't have to learn without that challenge. And looking down what that does in adulthood can be your superpower. It can be your
Can
strength.
be a very powerful tool. Absolutely. My God, you speak my language.
Yeah. Well, I also think too, Michael, I would like to think that our world is a little bit better, that we're a little bit better towards differences, that we've learned better. I had severe bullying when I was little. We've taught our kids, I think, a little bit more. Schools have picked up a little bit more for diversity and inclusion. So I would hope that that happens. I would hope that a 20-year-old understands Down syndrome, that they wouldn't be cruel like they used to be 50 years ago. And I also, sorry,
I
I'm going on.
wholeheartedly agree.
Right.
Yeah.
Here's one more thing though, and I'm just going to add a side comment from before of it is parents' job to teach their children to not stare at differences. And I'll tell you, my kids at 5 years old never, ever stared because I was on them like a wet sock. Because I step out my door, you're stared at,
Yeah.
right? So my kids, they were little, they knew, they didn't because I ingrained as soon as they could look at somebody
Well,
because
that they're
I
they're
was on
they're
my
they're
radar.
they're taught, and therefore then it's their reactions are radically different because we don't know. Again, even like last night at a volleyball game, how penetrating nonverbal communication can be, and just, and again, like I said, I laughingly dismiss that. I think in knowing where we are in life right now, most of the time, we're grateful and blessed that it's been radically different. But are there
Yeah,
those moments? Because
totally.
again, having a nonverbal child,
Yeah,
what does happen more often than not are adults wanting to communicate with my daughter,
sure.
and she can't even say hello back,
Yeah,
really. So,
yeah.
yeah,
At
yeah,
least, I mean, those are good intentions. Speaking from
yeah.
somebody who is stared at, it gets tiresome, right? I mean, you're there
It
and
is
watching
exhausting.
it.
No, no,
It's like,
yeah.
it's exhausting. Like, I'm now in my 50s. Like, could I not deal with something when I go to the bank? So I just think the messaging is like, parents, teach your kids. It gets really tiring to be stared at. So they can learn early on and they can learn why. But you need that parent on the radar. Okay, here's my second wrap up question for you. What do you wish you could tell your younger self in the moment that you were sobbing at Moo's birth? What's the one thing that now you wish you could say that you knew that penetrated deeply back then?
I think, probably fully understanding and appreciating, again, we're all in different places on our faith journey. And sometimes, even in my life, I look at it as a roller coaster, the peaks and valleys. And even when you're in those valleys of trusting and understanding, but again, understanding and appreciating that I have been given one of the greatest gifts
Hmm.
you will ever know in your lifetime. And really what that can do for you. I look back, at that time, and again, I look back at my life for, when Maddie was born in 99 to probably 2012 on the other side of my divorce of when I really started understanding and appreciating. And I have, trust me, not just talking about the hospital room, I've thought about that a lot in Maddie's lifetime.
Hmm.
Um, and again, it's knowing what great love. And I may have talked about this before, but you know, I have a living angel that to me is, if anyone of faith listening to this, to me, she's the closest thing to Christ I've ever seen because I laugh about it now and going, I don't think she's ever sinned because I don't think she's capable of it. So if you live with infinite love and you don't sin, you're the closest thing to Christ that may be walking on this earth. So I look back at that time sobbing in that hotel room in which I really wish I knew and understood what I do today.
Yeah, if you only
Or
knew.
starting to come on that other side, again in 2012, 2013. But again, Maddie was 13, 14 years old at that point.
Hmm. You know what I would say to your younger self? This has just come to me. You were chosen. You were
It's funny you say
chosen
it's,
to
it's
be
funny
her
you say
dad.
that
You
because
were
my
chosen to be
mom,
your dad.
the other thing that my mom told me, now it wasn't when I was sobbing when Maddie had come home. My mom said to me, she goes, look, she goes, I'm convinced that Christ goes to the chosen in utero and says, I need you to carry my cross. So I wholeheartedly agree that my ex-wife and I were chosen for this journey. And again, God already knew what was going to take place and how that I was going to have the ability to impact and influence the lives of others, even though it took a long time in that journey. But again, the other thing that Maddie taught me is patience. I have an insane amount of patience today that I did not have at one time, and that's an acquired taste. But dealing
It
with
is.
someone with great challenge,
Yeah, sure. It's
comes.
sink or swim. Like you can't be angry all the time and impatient all the time.
And
It's
I just saw this
forced
literally a
patience.
couple of days
Forced.
ago. I'm trying to think. Jim Carrey, I think was in the movie, or I don't know. Morgan Freeman was something about God. Morgan Freeman played God and was talking about, in this minute clip was, when people ask me for patience, I don't just give them patience, but I give them things in life to be able to understand and have patience. And that is one of, outside of love and that, patience is probably one of the greatest things Maddie has given me. Yeah. Yeah.
That totally makes sense because you can't, you couldn't keep living like that. Like it's like you actually have no choice. Either you're going to be angry and bitter and always upset, or you got to learn how to go with it and puree the food. And
And anger, it's all, I lived all of that.
I'm sure, I'm
100%.
sure,
Yeah.
I'm
And
sure.
that's why
Yeah.
in some form or fashion, that's what leads to divorce. It leads to broken
Yeah.
relationships, marriages, and yeah, yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. Hey, here's my last question. I now speak about getting on your kids' turf. Like, how do you connect with your kids? You get on the turf. What it is, what they want to do, what do they want to eat, where do they want to be, how are they feeling? So, my question for you about that is how do you get on Maddie's turf for connection?
Knowing and understanding and doing what she likes.
Hmm.
And that can literally be the simplicity of watching a show that she has seen 1,001 times, and then I could
Right.
probably give you the commentary, or if it's taking her to things she's madly in love with music. So it might be a situation I'm going somewhere for 3 or 4 hours going, oh dear Lord. But yet I know the amount of joy it will bring to her because she just gets immersed. I think again, they have a different level of connection with certain things. So she's highly connected to music. It's the same dance step for 3 hours, but yet
Love it.
I feel that connection with music.
Yeah.
Um, and even like last night, we topped the night off with a milkshake.
Right. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
but finding joy and happiness with Moo, as I tell people, is just in the simplicity of life, in being with those that she loves.
Mm-hmm.
So even though we went through COVID, her life wasn't stressful and filled with anxiety and all of that, because we can just hang at home. This is cool because I'm with my family, so in doing those things, the simple things with her doesn't require traveling on vacations, buying brand new cars, bigger TVs. It's not the stuff. It's just the togetherness.
Totally. I would think that getting on her turf is that you're watching the exact same cartoon for the 100th time and you're just as excited
It
and
is. So what I'm
invested as the first time.
is that when we're like watching SpongeBob or Monsters Inc. or any of that, it's me talking back and knowing and hearing her giggle. And we feel
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
amazing deep
Yeah.
connection, because even though at 26, where she still watched SpongeBob, she's laughing and giggling and like, my dad is too.
Totally. That's the connection.
Yeah.
That's such a connection when you get to laugh with your child at the same thing in that little cartoon.
And one of the other amazing gifts, and I touched on it briefly, is I do think she has the mind and process of things of like a 5, 6, 7-year-old kid. And when you're that young, you are so innocent. You're connected to things in life so differently.
Yeah.
And she still is, and probably always will be. And that's what makes her beautiful. So things do come a lot simpler at times when we think like a child.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, Michael Ray, thank you so much for talking to me again. And thank you for bringing hope to parents who are sobbing on the day that their child is born. That is
Amen to
hope.
that, sister. Thank you for having me again. I really appreciate it. It means a lot.
Thanks, Michael.
Yeah. God bless.
You too. Thanks for listening. If you want more episodes about how to support your child, there are links below from previous podcast episodes I did on audio of how to support. And you can do your part. Share this with somebody that might need it, a parent that's concerned for their child, and you can subscribe to this channel. So many more episodes to come of how we connect with our kids and get on their own turf. And click like on that little link below. I'd love some comments if you want future episode ideas or just some questions to respond to. I'll see you next time.